trusting yourself is not the same thing as feeling confident. And if I think back to the women on the WE Local panel, they had done hard things and they had conquered them. And I think that's when you start to feel the confidence. You may not feel it at the beginning, but you have to trust yourself to try and maybe even fail a few times. And then I think that's when that self-trust starts to follow.
Hi, I'm your host, Larry Guthrie, Director of Content Strategy at the Society of Women Engineers. Welcome to Diverse, a SWE podcast. Earlier this year at WE Local Bengaluru, Kelsea Fitzgerald, Director of Operations at Chevron's Engineering and Innovation Excellence Center in India, moderated a panel called Your Inner Engineer, Self-Trust is the Foundation. Kelsea is joining us today to share her own journey from 15 years at Chevron in the US to taking on a global leadership role in Bengaluru and how self-trust has shaped her path all along the way. Kelsea, I'm so excited to speak with you today. Welcome to Diverse.
Thanks, Larry. I'm thrilled to be here. It's really an honor to be part of this conversation, and I appreciate the opportunity to connect with women and allies who are as passionate about diversity and inclusion as I am.
Yes, you've come to the right group for sure. 50,000 strong and growing around the world. Let's start off with a quick intro, bring our listeners up to speed on you. And if you could walk us through a little bit of your career journey so far, from studying chemical engineering in the US to your current role in Bengaluru.
Sure. So right now I am the Director of Operations at Chevron's Engineering and Innovation Excellence Center. We like to call it the engine. And I moved to India last year and took on this role. And it has been a tremendous opportunity, both personally and professionally. My degree, as you mentioned, is in chemical engineering, and I started my career as a process engineer at Chevron's refinery in Northern California. And then over the years, I've worked in a variety of roles across multiple sites in the United States. So I started in engineering, spent some time in operations. I also worked in maintenance and reliability, did a little bit of work in supply chain logistics, and then I was most recently in corporate strategy in Houston before making the move to India. And one of the comments that I receive repeatedly throughout my career is, that's a weird role for a chemical engineer. And honestly, that has been what I have loved about my career. I've worked in many different aspects of the energy business, and with a career with Chevron, like you mentioned, I'm over 15 years, and it's just been a continuous journey of learning and different challenges, and it's been a good journey so far.
It sounds like. Now, what type of adjustment did you make, or was there even a major adjustment or any kind of adjustment moving from the US to another country?
It is a shift. It was a shift both personally and professionally. I was somewhat involved in scoping this opportunity for Chevron to establish the office here in India when I was working in Houston. So I was familiar with the concept, but the first time I ever came to India was actually when I came out here on a business trip to see the office. And at that point, the office was just an empty concrete shell. And it's just been amazing to watch the whole thing come to life. Personally, there's adjustments to how you live. And I think there's some things that you really only get to know when you live somewhere, and even being a visitor or tourist. So, ordering filter coffee or patiently waiting for a cow to cross the street, they'll always have a special place in my heart, I'd say.
That sounds great. And so you actually established this particular office in India.
Yes. Yeah. We opened the office officially last year and then began our hiring journey. And so first employees in operations joined in January, and the growth curve has just been incredible. So, my first team meeting was just this small conference room. We all went around and introduced ourselves and talked about our families. The last operations team meeting we had was a couple hundred people, and we're more of a town hall style. So it's just been incredible to watch the ramp up here and Chevron establish a presence in India.
That's fantastic. Kind of the theme of your talk at the WE Local there is probably an integral part of your journey here to move to a completely different country, to start up a new office, that idea of self-trust, and that panel you moderated at WE Local Bengaluru that I hear was wildly popular, by the way. Can you share what self-trust means to you in the context of engineering, leadership, and your journey?
Yeah, it was an honor to moderate that panel at WE Local. And, the women on the panel have just had incredible careers. And we explored how self-trust can fuel innovation, it can fuel resilience, and really what their experience with that has been as women in technical fields, similar to my own. But I might just share a couple highlights from the panel that really stuck with me. As one of the women shared her story of having her two children. And after her first child, she made the decision not to return to work. That was what she felt was right for her at the time. And then after having her second child, she said she just felt this calling, this inner voice saying that the time was right and she should go back. And she wanted to go back to her career for that fulfillment that it brought. And she listened to that inner voice and made that decision. And I just thought, what a great example of trusting yourself and making the decision that's right for you. And that decision might be different based on where you are in your life at the time. And as women, we face so many external pressures, expectations of family and work, and sometimes they're conflicting. And I just thought, listening to herself and really trusting that, it was just such a real and powerful example.
Yes. And hopefully people were able to connect with that, right? To wherever they are on their self-trust journey. About yours in particular, can you remember a specific time when you had to trust yourself, even if it didn't make sense to the people around you?
Yeah, I think I'll go back to the decision to move here. I was super excited about the opportunity. My husband was super excited about it. But there, admittedly was this part of me that was like, me? Like, can I do this? And I had this whole conversation with myself in my head, right? Like, do you have the experience? It's a big move. And talking to myself, like, yes, you do. You've worked in this area before. You've moved before, granted not internationally. But my husband is always my biggest supporter and supported me on that. And, I think what's interesting is that trusting yourself is not the same thing as feeling confident. Pushing yourself to that next level is hard and it is uncomfortable. And if I think back to the women on the WE Local panel, they had done hard things and they had conquered them. And I think that's when you start to feel the confidence. You may not feel it at the beginning, but you have to trust yourself to try and maybe even fail a few times. And then I think that's when that self-trust starts to follow.
So it sounds like the self-trust is the foundation on which confidence is built.
Oh, that's a great way to say it.
That marketing degree sometimes comes in handy.
There you go.
With your self-trust, what do you think helped you build that self-trust in the first place? So was it something that you built gradually, or do you remember a clear defining moment?
Definitely for me, something that built up gradually. And I'm reading The Diary of a CEO right now. He's got a great podcast too, but he was talking about how our brains are wired to search for information that validates our own thoughts and opinions. So if you think you're not good at something, your brain is going to go out and look for data points that reinforce that. And so you have to kind of work through that first feeling of discomfort and actually do the thing that scares you, do the thing that you don't think you can do. And then you start to build some data points to show your brain that you can do it. And then the confidence comes. But the trust to dive in has to come first. But I think it does get easier. Like once you've gone through that process a few times, that feeling is there and that you're going to work through it. And then you can be a little more comfortable taking on the uncertainty and the new challenges, even if it still feels a little scary.
Yeah, it sounds like anything, you're exercising a muscle, flexing some ability.
Absolutely.
Well, I'm so glad that you're able to attend WE Local Bengaluru and share your insights. The whole conference experience, what was that like for you? I want to have our listeners hear what it was like, and hopefully we'll see them at next year's event. So what were the highlights for you?
Yeah, it was electric. To see over 2,000 participants, over 1,200 visitors at our Chevron booth. There were students, there were experienced professionals, and it was just this vibrant exchange of ideas. We had fun. We had these virtual reality demos and we did some energy industry trivia, but we also, got into some of the serious issues that women face and really that we all face. For example, emerging technology. There was this great talk on raising kids in the digital age and the opportunities and the challenges that can bring. And it was packed. That talk was just packed. The panel that I moderated was deeply personal, and the insights that the panelists shared, I know stuck with me and stuck with our audience. So there were those, and then there was the network lounge, there was the booths. And so these conversations, spilled over and continued as we were continuing throughout the conference. The theme of the event was Together We Rise. And I just thought that could not have been more perfect. That is exactly what happened. We came together, we boosted each other up. I'm just really looking forward to the next one. We're going to be at the Pune WE Local in December.
Yes, we're expanding our We Locals in India. So this is the first time we'll be in Pune. We're really excited. Love hearing that story because for that experience to happen, everything from sharing those personal stories to even the connections, we always promote these to be a safe space where people connect and everyone's so generous with their time and their energy and their support. It's wonderful to hear these stories to where that promise is fulfilled from the people that are attending. So I thank you for sharing that. So I know I speak on behalf of SWE when we say we're really gratified to hear those types of stories.
It was an honor for us to attend. We incorporated last year and started up our office just recently. I think it was a surprise to a lot of people that were here in India. And so to have the opportunity to share our story, Chevron Engineering and Innovation Excellence Center, a little bit about our journey, it's just a great opportunity to start to make some new relationships here in India.
No, absolutely. Now, have you been to our WE annual conferences as well?
I have not had the opportunity to do that. I am super excited to make it there. I've heard that they are also electric and energizing, would you say?
Yes. We always say, depending on which one we're mentioning first, one is the bigger sister, if you will, of the other, but it's the same dynamics, just on a bigger scale.
Yeah, it was structured well. We came together and you had the larger forums and then the breakout sessions where you could dive into the issues a little deeper. And then, like I said, the downtime where you can build those connections, both personal and professional, just really well done.
What was the one takeaway for you to where you were able to kind of put that in practice, whether in your personal or professional life?
An interesting learning for me was particularly a concern that came up in multiple conversations around women having children and taking a break and then having trouble getting back into the workforce because of that break in their resume. I know this is a challenge around the world, but it really came out in the conversations that I had at the We Local event here. And as a director here at Engine, I'm doing an immense amount of hiring. It's just something that I'm really glad came to my radar that I can be aware of. And we talked about that back at the Engine at one of our panels as well, and that we really support women returning to the workplace. We have a referral program. We want those referrals and we want to support women in that. So, it's an issue that I'm aware of, but understanding how much women in India deal with that was a big learning for me.
Of course. I mean, I think that's what I love is the diversity of our community. You really go to these events and you are exposed and really get to hear from somebody's experiences might be very different than your own. And hopefully that helps you grow and makes you an even better person, professionally and personally.
Absolutely. We also did some hiring. That's been fun to have new hires start to show up and, welcome them to Engine. And we met them there at the conference and they're excited to be part of our company. And I just over the moon to see them show up after having met them a few months back. So that was a great bonus as well.
There you go. Testament to the connections that you can make at one of SWE's conferences. I love it.
Yeah.
We covered so much ground today. I know many of our listeners, they're wondering, where do I start with my self-trust journey? Or, how can I help others with theirs? Wherever you are, can I start or can I help uplift someone else? As we wrap up our convo today, what's one thing that a woman engineer or ally listener could do this week, an actionable item for like a jumping off point?
I'd say do one thing that makes you slightly uncomfortable and gets you one step closer to your goal. And that could be speaking up in a meeting. It could be raising your hand for an assignment that scares you a little bit, but that's how you start to stretch yourself. That's how you start to trust yourself and build that confidence. So it'll be different for everybody, but that's what I would say. Pick one thing that makes you slightly uncomfortable and go for it.
Kelsea, that's a great tip. And what about the allies? What would you say to them to help them along their journey?
Yeah, I'd say take the time to understand what support looks like to the women in your life and provide that support and amplify women's voices. And if you're new to being an ally, that might be a little uncomfortable for you. So, my challenge, try that one thing that's slightly uncomfortable, take a step in that direction. We're all always this wonderful work in progress. And if you're continuing to challenge yourself, you're always going to be in that zone that feels a little uncomfortable. I was telling my husband on our walk this evening that it never goes away. Like, you think maybe I'll get old enough, or maybe I'll, get to a certain level where it'll feel comfortable and I won't be, scared. But anytime you're doing new things, it's going to feel uncomfortable and it's going to feel scary. So find that way to just drive a little bit of progress and take that step and do that thing that scares you a little bit.
I love that. You want to say, like, am I ever done? And the answer is no, we're not, because we can always be better tomorrow than we are today. So thank you for that.
Yes.
Kelsey, this has been an amazing conversation. We covered so much ground, from welcoming change and what that looks like, and trusting, building that self-trust and confidence. I'm really hoping that our listeners find some nugget that they are able to take with them and help them a little bit more this week.
Absolutely. Appreciate the opportunity to talk with you today. It's been a great conversation, and I agree. I hope everyone who's listening walks away feeling a little more empowered to trust themselves.
That's the hope, right? And if you'd actually like to meet Kelsey in person, I bet she's going to be at our upcoming WE Local conference in Pune, India. That's this December 4th and 5th. And SWE holds WE Local conferences around the world throughout the year, bringing together engineers and technologists, professional development, networking, and inspirational speakers. Of course, we'll be back in Bengaluru next year for WE Local 2026, and that's April 9th through the 10th. And of course, we hope we'll see you in Pune or at any of the other WE Locals throughout the world. So if you're interested in either of those events, or in our WE Local conferences that we hold in US, Europe, or Brazil, you can visit welocal.swe.org. That's welocal.swe.org to join with us, grow your network, and get inspired from messages just like Kelsey just shared. I'm Larry Guthrie, and from all of us at SWE, thanks for listening.